Alright, so we've now got a list of photo objects and a user interface to display them on, so the next step is to tie the two together. Now we're going to do that by sending the data to a Recycler adapter that the Recyclerview can use to display the list of photos. Now the principle is very similar to what we did when we used the list view to display the top 10 apps that we parsed out of the XML from Apple's RSS feed. Now the adapter takes data from a data source, in our case it's a list of photo objects, and packages the data into a view holder object. The view holders are sent to the Recyclerview whenever it requests more data. Now the Recyclerview will send back views as they scroll off the screen for the Recycler adapter to reuse, and that saves creating hundreds of views. And because they're encapsulated in a view holder, this also saves having to call find view by ID all the time to get the widgets in the view. Now just like with the list view, we'll see that when we run the program that only a few view holders are created. So the diagram represents a few view holders being created by the Recycler adapter that are sort of circular exchange at the bottom of the diagram as old views are sent to the adapter for recycling. So our Recycler adapter is going to do a bit more than that because the photo objects only contain the URL for the thumbnails and not the images themselves. So it's going to be the job for the adapter to fetch the thumbnails as the list is scrolled up and down. That's what the Flickr cloud at the top left is supposed to represent, by the way, the thumbnails being downloaded from Flickr as they're needed. Alright, with that said, now let's have a look at the class and flow diagram for the app again. Now we've completed the right hand side a few videos ago and that was working fine. We now need to concentrate on the Flickr Recyclerview Adapter class and the Flickr Image View Holder class, so we're going to make a start on that in this video. And once we've done that, we can then create the code for photo details activity to display the full photos and for search activity to change the search tags and get a different set of photos. But first things first, let's get those two classes created. Alright, so back in Android Studio, we're going to create a new class by right-clicking on the package as we normally do. New Kotlin file class. We're going to call this one Flickr Recyclerview Adapter. Okay, you're going to select class from here and click on OK. And just made a typo there. I should really call that adapter with an ER is the correct spelling, at least in Australia. So I'm going to rename that to adapter. Press enter there. Alright, so we need to extend or subclass the Recyclerview.adapter class. And we're going to use a generic type parameter to ensure that only our Flickr image view holder objects can be used with this adapter. So I'm going to, at the end of the definition, class Flickr Recyclerview Adapter, we're going to extend the Recyclerview.adapter class. So it's Recyclerview.adapter. And we're going to add a diamond, then it's going to be Flickr image and view holder. And we're going to get an error there because we haven't created that yet, and add parentheses on the end outside of the or after the greater than sign. And we're going to start then after that. On the next line, we're going to add a tag as per normal. Private val tag equals. It's going to be Flickr Recyclerview Adapter. Okay. Now at this point we do have to be very careful here with this tag. In fact, have to be very, very careful. Now a log tag can be a maximum of 23 characters. Any longer than 23 characters and you'll get an error when you call one of the logging methods such as log.d. Now logging is very useful to us, but it's not an essential part of the app. So it would be a real shame to have our app crash just because we wanted to do some logging. But that's what will happen if I leave the tag set to what it is here, Flickr Recyclerview Adapter. So it's very easy to just copy and paste the class name, and I've done that in the past, but be aware that there's a limit on the length of the tag, and make sure that you don't use more than 23 characters. It's the name when you're using a tag. Now when using Android Studio for Java code, there's a shortcut that automatically truncates the tag name. But we don't have that for Kotlin code, not yet anyway, so watch out for long tag names. So I'm going to delete the extra characters so our app doesn't crash. So I'm going to come over here and leave it at Flickr Recyclerview Adapt, basically deleting the ER in the end. Now, of course, I could have avoided the problem by not using such a long name for the class. Flickr Adapter perhaps would have been just fine, but then I wouldn't have had an excuse to warn you about this potential for errors. Alrighty, so moving on. Now, main activity is going to provide our adapter with the list of photos, so therefore we need to store them in a photo list property. So let's go ahead and add that. So after the class name, I'm going to put parentheses private space var space photo list colon, it's going to be list and then diamond operator of photo objects. Alright, so we've still got some errors here. We've got the first one. There's some methods that we need to override, we need to implement. That's relating to the onBind view holder. We'll come to that shortly. And also this other error because we haven't yet created the Flickr image view holder class. So I'm going to go ahead and do that first. Now, a common mistake here would be to declare the view holder as an inner class of the Recycler adapter, but that can actually lead to memory leaks. Now, in Java, we'd make the class static. Now, in Kotlin, we can place it in the same file as our adapter. The adapter will then have access to its properties, just like we did for the list view adapter in the top 10 downloader app. Now, I'm mentioning Java here because you'll come across lots of example code in Java when searching for Recyclerview.adapter. Now, some of those examples use an inner class and fail to make it static. So watch out for that and move the class to the start of the file so that it's not actually inside the adapter class if you convert code like that to Kotlin. So to do that, I'm going to come back here and start it at the top of the class. And we're going to do class Flickr. You can see it's already helping us. It's an image view holder, parentheses, view, colon, view with a capital V, then colon, it's going to be Recyclerview dot view holder, parentheses view, then left and right curly braces, and then inside that we're going to have a couple of variables, var thumbnail, colon, that's going to be an image view, equals view dot find view by ID, r.id.thumbnail, and the next one is going to be var title colon text view equals view.find view by ID parentheses r.id.title. You can find that you can find sometimes Android Studio does some funny things there. You can notice that the view wasn't being resolved properly, but then it did actually eventually find and realize that it needed to import android.view.view, and that error disappeared. Right, I'll just leave that all showing now. Now, this class that we've just created, the Flickr image view holder, well, that's very similar to the view holder that we used for the list view in the top 10 downloader app. It just contains properties to store the image view and the text view that will hold the data we're displaying. And that's literally all the class does. It's basically just a way of storing references to the widgets in the view that will be displayed by the Recycler view, just like we did when we improved the adapter for the list view. Now, the difference here, though, is that we don't get a choice. We have to implement a view holder when using a Recycler view. Now, we've got an error because we still haven't implemented the required onBind view holder method. This is error here. There's actually two there. There's also going to be a get item count that we need to implement as well. It's actually 3 in total. We're going to implement those next, and that's going to be inside the Flickr Recyclerview Adapter class. So let's go ahead and just make sure your cursor is within that class, and I'm going to use Control-I to implement that. And that's the same for both Mac and PC. We're going to do get item or implement get item count on bind view holder, also this on create view holder. Okay, so that's now, we've now implemented, created the stubs at least for those code, for those functions, and we're ready to start implementing it. Now, starting with onBind view holder, the second one, note that the holder in onBind view holder and actually also parent in onCreate view holder, they're both declared as nullable types. Now, that may change as Google get around to annotating the Android source code, but at the moment, what I'm going to do is just delete the question mark from both. Firstly, the one there in onBind view holder, then also coming down here to parent in onCreate view holder, delete that one as well. Now, is that safe to do? Well, in this case, yes, it is. Our app will soon crash if it isn't, but you can actually check out the Recyclerview source code if you're not sure. And like the list view, the Recyclerview will always provide a view holder when it calls onBind view holder. And for that reason, it is safe to do what we've just done. Okay, so on the onCreate view holder function, we'll just inflate a view from the browse.xml layout that we've created and then return that view. So let's write the code for that. And we'll put a note here that it's called by the layout manager when it needs a new view. All right, so we're going to do a log first. So log.d parentheses tag comma double quotes dot onCreate view holder. New view requested. Then we're going to do val view is equal to layout inflator dot from parentheses parent dot context parentheses dot inflate. Then within parentheses again, it's going to be r dot layout dot browse comma parent comma false. And then lastly, we're going to return Flickr image view holder parentheses view. So again, this function is there to inflate a view from the browse.xml layout we created and then return that view. So in order to inflate the XML into a view, we need to get an inflator. So the static layout inflator.from function returns an inflator for the provided context. In this case, we're using the context of the parent view group that was passed to us in the parent parameter. Talking about the code on line 35. We're then calling the inflate function and giving it the resource ID of the XML file. And of course, we saw browse.xml a few videos ago when we set that up and created it. Now, by the way, a common error you'll see is null being passed as the parent parameter to the inflate method. And I actually mentioned this in the YouTube app videos. Now, you might come across a line similar to this. I'm just going to paste some code on there just to give you an idea of what I'm talking about. So you might see something along the lines of this, which will sort of work, but unfortunately also sort of won't. Now, without knowing the parent view, the inflator has no way of knowing things like what theme should be applied. So the styling of the widgets will just get the defaults and they won't look right if you've made any changes to the themes. Now, there's no excuse for doing that because we've been passed the parent view as a parameter. So I'm going to delete that line and we'll go back to that first version that actually does use the parent parameter. So I'm going to delete this one. All right, so the final parameter in the inflate method, this one here attached to root, that tells the inflator whether to attach, unsurprisingly, the view to its root or not. Now, we don't want to do that. The Recyclerview is going to take care of all that. In fact, that's the reason why the incorrect function is often used. By passing null, there's no root to attach to, so it works, but it's not the correct way to do things, as I've mentioned. The correct way is to pass the parent, then pass false as the third parameter. So that tells the inflator not to attach the inflated view to its parent. Now, attaching a view, by the way, just means adding it to the parent layout. Pretty much what we do when we drag a widget onto the layout designer or when we use layout.addView in the YouTube, or when we use rather layout.addView in the YouTube app to add the player to the layout. All right, so I'm going to leave the onBind view holder function till last because that's really the only interesting one. Let's simply get the other stuff out of the way first. So we're going to implement the get item count first, or next rather. And we'll start off with a log. So log.d parentheses, and it's going to be tag, comma, double quotes, dot, get item count called. And we're going to return if parentheses photo list dot is not empty, and closing parentheses there, photo list dot size else 0. So that just literally returns the number of photos in the list. Now, we're using an if as an expression here. So it checks the condition and evaluates to photo list.size if the condition is true, otherwise it evaluates to 0. Alright, so there's two other functions that we're going to need, and as they're both really short, I'm going to add them now. I'm going to put them immediately after get item count. So firstly, we want a load new data function, so fun load new data, parentheses, new photos, colon, list, diamond operator photo. There's going to be photo list equals new photos. Then we're going to do notify dataset changed, parentheses, so we're calling that function. So basically this function takes the new list as a parameter and stores it in the photo list field. Now the notify dataset change function tells the Recyclerview that the data has changed so that it can refresh the display. To be more accurate, it tells any registered observers that the data has changed. And you'll see that function called in other places when a Recyclerview is not being used, but here the registered observer is our Recyclerview. Alright, so the other thing we're going to want to do here is to get the full picture when the user taps one of the thumbnails in the list. So main activity will need to get the photo record for the item that was tapped. So the function we need here is fun get photo, parentheses position, colon int, then I'm going to return colon photo question mark and add a left and right curly braces, and the code is going to be return if parentheses photo list dot is not empty, closing parentheses, photo list square brackets position else null. Now an activity that can call the get photo function to retrieve the details for a photo from its position in the list when it needs one. And that'll be useful when a thumbnail is tapped to provide the full details of the photo to display. Now we should try not to return null in Kotlin. Sometimes though it is still necessary. Now we're going to display a placeholder image if there is no matching photos. So in that case, photo list is going to be empty and there's not really anything else sensible that we can return. Alright, so let's end the video here now. In the next one, we're going to write the code for the remaining function on bind view holder. See you in the next video.